Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Mentally Ill Creative Podcast. Today, I'm here with a special guest, Josh Neyman, the creative force behind Neyman Creative. His journey intertwines creativity with purpose and resilience with mental wellness. How are you doing today, Josh?
I'm awesome. Thanks for having me, Jared. It's a pleasure to be on.
Man, thanks for coming. I like to be transparent with my audience, so I always tell them, it's been a bit of a ride trying to get to line up me and Josh getting here, but I'm glad that we're finally able to do it. So
Same.
the way that this usually works is I ask one of three questions. So I pick three letters, and then you choose, and that's going to be the question that I ask you. It's a general icebreaker thing. So I'm going to ask those to you now. So A, B, or C.
Let's go C for creative.
All right.
Alex.
Zombie apocalypse hits. Who's your squad and why?
Great question. Well, it depends on how big my squad can be.
Okay.
Because I'll grow that thing to be as large as possible. We'll have a commune. But to begin with, it's family. So my daughter is number one.
Okay.
Then it would be my wife and puppy. And because I don't know where I'd be without them. My daughter, my rock, she just turned a year and a half old,
Oh.
and they're going to the library right now, but you might be able to hear her scream or yell in the background. But if I was gonna go beyond that, I would start, inviting my other relatives, my mom, my dad, my nana, who is my only living grandparent, and I'd go forward from there. Then I'd start with my professional connections that are just like great friends, and back home in Indiana, I have my best friends. I have a best friend out in Colorado who hunts and hikes mountains, and I'd start with the people just absolutely closest to me. I don't care if they can fend off zombies or not. It's hopefully we just make a good door and we can all hang out and be together at the
Yeah.
end.
It seems like you have a really great network um, of people, both family and friends and professional contacts. That's something that I've aspired to have as I go forward. How do you think you've managed to develop the network that you have? What would be your go-to strategy for someone who's trying to build up their own network?
Oh boy. Yeah, that's a great question. Well, time and commitment is definitely one thing. Since 2008, I volunteered at the world's largest computer graphics conference, which is called SIGGRAPH, and that changed my life. I went and helped, volunteered my time to help run those conferences, but in return, I gained amazing friendships from all over the world, got to travel the world, got to elevate myself as a professional, and that really broke me into what networking was all about. The conference, you were there to learn, to elevate yourself, to see what's going on in the industry. Pixar shows has classes on how they did fluid dynamics in Up or whatever it may be. It's very specific, or there's an art gallery, emerging technologies.
Oh,
But really, the meat of it is that you get to meet all these amazing people who are doing what you do in some capacity within computer graphics all over the world. And they're some of the best of the best. And that really opened my eyes to like really putting yourself out there, and I've extrapolated that to when I moved to Florida with my family. Well, I'm from Indiana and all my connections are up there. How do I start fresh? Well, I need to join a networking group. I need to get out and about and go to events and just put myself out there. Really, it's if you put yourself out there and you're doing something genuine that you care about and that you love, people will resonate with that. And if you're nice, people will resonate back to you. And that's what it's all about.
nice. Nice. That's a troubling, not troubling. It's something I have trouble with, I should say. Putting oneself
Easier
out
said than
there.
done.
Yeah, for sure. Because I'm definitely an introvert, and um, I mean, I'm an introvert when when sober. I'm an introvert. When you have sometimes you got to get a little liquid courage and you feel a lot easier to sort of connect with people. But when it
Sure.
comes to just like being clear headed and just like going into a room, to me that's like nightmare 101 is like trying to tell one. I think it's because I hate small talk. I don't do really well. It's really awkward for me. I'm really awkward with small talk, so I feel like everybody else is either judging the fact that I'm terrible with small talk, or they're also bad at small talk. So, but I do like the strategy that you have of just trying to put yourself out there and trying to get yourself in spaces that are well, where other people are like-minded. That seems like a really great strategy to try. So I'm definitely going to
Absolutely.
try to do it myself.
The more you do it too, just like public speaking, which that kind of is, or playing a concert, for me, I'm a musician and, I play on stage much differently now than I did when I first started playing music. It's all about becoming comfortable, but as with the learning curve with literally anything, it takes time to feel comfortable in that thing, even with small talk. Like for me, small talk happens fast because then I just end up talking about like, hey, what do you do? It's like, are you doing well? Great. The weather is nice. I'm very grateful that we're wherever we
Yeah,
are in this space.
for sure.
What's up with you? What unique stuff do you do? Where are you from? And you just dive in. I usually like try to
Seems like you
shave
have
off
a
some time.
Yeah. It seems like you have a real interest in other people, so you easily. It seems like it's much easier to do that, which is what I've had as advice that's been given to me is similar to that. Is like if you take a genuine interest in other people, sometimes small talk can become a lot easier to do because you're genuinely just trying to learn about another person. Um,
100%. And you never
yes,
know who that person is, how
exactly.
much is behind those eyes, and I've learned to never underestimate someone because you just have no idea. Like meeting you,
Mhm.
it's been a pleasure getting to know you, and as we talk more, it continues to be a pleasure. And that's the fun of it. You start to peel back the layers of the onion, and you can get a lot from anybody's experiences. And so I'm very open-minded in that regard, just as like friendships and being out in the world, because what else is it about? Like interacting with people and understanding what world we live in. You have these experiences, and there's a finite amount of experiences to have, as we were literally just talking about before recording,
Yeah,
and just soaking that in and being there's something very special to that. In a professional realm, the same thing applies where I don't know who this person is. They could have a lot of money or be sitting on an idea that they need all of my services for, and I have no idea. And so if I'm open and I'm just genuine about like, hey, here I am and here's what I do, they might be like, oh, well, I need a website for sure. You never know.
course. Yeah, true. Very true. Okay, so you talked about that you were that you're a musician, that you play that play music and stuff like that, and you're also you also do some of the computer would you say computer graphic stuff?
Yeah, that's a general way to put it.
Okay.
Computer
Okay.
graphics marketing.
So in essence, you are a creative. So what I want to do is I want to jump in a time machine with you real quick, and I'd like to know what's the story behind the moment you realized creativity was your call.
Oh, it was early on for sure. I grew up around musicians. My cousin was a musician, is a musician. My good friends growing up, like all of them were musicians in some capacity. And I always felt like I liked creating stuff. Making something that wasn't there before was really enticing to me, and it felt good. The very first memory that I have of like graphic design, though, I had an assignment, maybe it was like fourth, fifth grade, something like that, where we had to make like a fake magazine article and put research together and organize it. And I geeked out. I fell in love with like, oh, I can put this here and then this goes under it and then there's an image and then the layout. I didn't know what I was doing, but really I was fascinated with layout, which is a key component of design, a principle of like how do we put these things together? And there's a lot of content. How do we make it feel not cluttered and friendly to read. And early on, before I knew anything, I was clicking with that. I wish I had that design because it'd be fascinating to look at. But that was the moment where I really felt like, oh my goodness, visually, this is like something cool. Musically, um, I lived with my grandparents and I told them I want to, I want an instrument. And I was fascinated with drums. And they got me a snare drum. And they were like, "Wait, what did we do?" And I was like, and I liked the snare drum because I loved drumming. But then they were like, "Well, what Ryan plays guitar. Do you want to try a guitar?" And I was like, "Well, yeah, that looks fun too." And so they got me a guitar instead, and we sold the snare drum. It's funny, so my whole career for like 10 years was guitar. And and that was awesome. I I learned how to get lost in practice and like
Mhm.
learning songs, and an hour would go by and you just be in a trance. And there was something very special about that.
Mhm.
Undergrad hit, and in college I found drums, or drums found me, and I never looked back. My drum set's over there. I have a guitar. It's right there,
Oh, I see it.
but
I see
it
it.
doesn't get as much played as my drums. My drums are like the most addicting, challenging, most rewarding uh thing that I've ever done. There's
That's
something very special about it. So drums found me again.
it's because it was meant to be. I think I find that happens a lot when it comes to creative things. I think the thing that you're meant to do, or the thing that's for you, is kind of, it's almost like, I don't know if you're familiar with like Avatar, the last Airbender.
Oh, not that one.
Okay, yeah. Well, and that, I'm gonna geek out on you for a little bit, but that they talk about how like the avatars are drawn to the toys that they used to play with in their former lives, and I find that that's similar to creatives, because like for me, writing is something that constantly comes back, whether it be screenwriting specifically. No matter what I do, and that itch to do filmmaking, like I will tell myself, you know, this is something I love, but I'm not right. I can't do it right now, and I need to focus on other creative things that I can do right now, financially and time wise. And always, film will find a way to creep back in and just be like, no, you want to do me, do this. So I totally get that pull to the thing that's for you. So I definitely get that. And I like that. A lot of what you said resonates with me. You talked about you did this from a young age. Were your parents, did they cultivate a creative your creative nature, or were they more academic?
No, definitely more on the creative side. Hey, do what you love. Sometimes almost like maybe to a fault where it's like just go and like do what you want. Not really to a fault because it worked out.
Of course.
But I know my dad didn't feel like he got that encouragement, so he did the opposite and just encouraged me and said, "Hey, travel the world, do what you love because you want to be happy with the work that you do." And, that speaks back to what we were just talking about, where, for you in writing,
Mhm.
or me in drumming, if you're being honest with yourself about what you love to do and what you do not enjoy doing, and you're honest about, well, I should probably then pivot, then you find yourself adjusting and calibrating and realigning yourself to do the thing that you love. And yeah, so my parents were definitely pivotal in that. I never, same with my mom. I always like, just do what you love. Find what you like doing and do that. Although there was one time where she was my soccer coach and I was like, I want to play goalie. And she was like, no, you can't do that because she was nervous that I'd get hurt. And I'm like, but I want to play goalie. Funny enough, then in hockey, I played like 2 years of goalie in hockey. And so she had that one coming. And it was really fun, but really scary. So I went back to wing in hockey.
That's I love that. I love that. I love to hear that you had that support system.
Yeah,
I always tell
I'm
people that
grateful.
like my life has been, my mom was very, very supportive of me when it came to screenwriting, in the sense that she got me my first screenwriting course when I was 15 years old. But when it came
Wow.
down to pursuing it as like a career, that was where that support was kind of not as existent. And I love my mom. My mom is My mom is my everything. But that if I had to look back, and I know that I didn't have that kind of environment where it was like, go out and do that. My mom was always like, try to find a plumbing job or something, something that's going to make sure that you can, take care of your family or whatever. And I found very early on that I don't work well with um, that kind of environment. I'm just
Yeah.
not, I have to work in an environment where I can create. Fortunately, the day job that I currently have allows me the free time to do all the creative things that I want while getting paid to do what I'm doing. So I'm really grateful for that. But I know my own environment, what works for me and what doesn't. That makes me wonder for you, considering the fact that you had the support that you had, self-awareness. At what point do you consider yourself a person with strong self-awareness right now? Or at this point in your life, I should say.
Now more than ever, for
Okay.
sure. It's been a process. And I wanted to speak back about process to what we were just talking about really
Sure.
quick, which is that the difficulty about creativity and sometimes why the encouragement isn't there is because unfortunately the visual arts, the arts in general have been undervalued. It
Mhm.
still are. And so it's like for me, it's been an absolute battle since 2008 doing it professionally to get paid properly for what we do. And even still, I feel myself trying to squeeze the world to show, hey, there is so much value in this. Imagine the world without the things that you see and the beautiful things that you interact with and the music that you listen to. What kind of a world would it be? Is that a world that you want to value, or do you want to value the arts? And so we
Amen.
just, like keeping a priority on that. And same for me being an educator for 6 years at the Art Institute. Uh, the undervalue of education is an issue too. And so, I think, the world needs to take a breath and a step back and like look at the landscape of things and realize where value could be better placed. And I'm not
Yeah.
telling people what to do, but as a whole, I think it's up to us artists, educators to tell the world, hey, this is the cost of a logo or whatever it may be, and we deserve value for these things. Or music doesn't just like happen. It's
Of
a
course.
work that takes 20 years potentially, or whatever it is. Bohemian Rhapsody was not written overnight.
Right, right,
It
for
was
sure.
recorded in 1 month, just recorded. Um, but so self-awareness, getting back to that, I just wanted to make sure I hit
Yeah,
on that.
of course.
Um, that has been a process because I've you like as a young person, you feel like you know a lot because you're
Mhm.
naive, and like sometimes there's beauty in naivety because you don't know. Like I love the saying, the more you know, the more you don't know. I don't know if you've ever
Mhm.
heard that,
Yeah,
but
for sure. Yeah.
I feel that so hard where the more I learn something, it's like, oh, I actually don't know a lot because I'm zooming out in a way
Right.
and the world becomes bigger and more complex. And there's a beauty to that. And there's also a beauty to the simplicity of being younger. But like for me, my awareness has come in stages where like, okay, starting to teach. I got a big zoom out of what it's like to be on that side of things and what teaching entails, and also what it requires and what it taught me. I think teaching taught me more than I taught a lot of people because I learned so much valuable stuff on like how to navigate a classroom. For me, I had 4 hour classes. It was ridiculous, like
Wow.
filling 4 hours without losing people. Having my daughter was like the biggest calibration for me personally. Like for me, I've cut out drinking out of my life. That just wasn't serving me. And I guess it just took like having a daughter and being like, do I want to forget stuff? Who do I want to be around her or the next day? And for me, it's like a no-brainer, and it was easy. And then it was able to allow me to reflect on like, who was that dude? And I
Mm.
thought I was doing great, and it's not like I was doing bad, but now I feel so much better, like mentally, physically, health-wise. I'm better in my business. I'm more present with my family just from stopping one thing, and
Yeah.
it simplifies the world. So it's like this constant zoom out and recalibrating based on my experiences. And I don't want that to stop. Like that's the beauty of life, I think,
Yeah,
is that understanding yourself more in context to understanding the world more. For me, I'm a very big proponent of science and discovery, and that's a rabbit hole. You could never stop inquiring. There's always more to know.
of
And
course.
so the more the puzzle you put together, the more fascinating things get.
For sure. I agree with that completely. I think yeah, I think that's the purpose of human existence is to learn, explore and see what is and what isn't and how we fit in with what is and what isn't.
Yeah.
How we play a small role in a much larger tapestry of existence and recognizing what that role may be. Some of us learn exactly what our purpose is and live in that truth for all of our days, and some of us never do, unfortunately. Um, but I think even just trying new things is a great way to try to figure out exactly what your purpose is and what you should or shouldn't do. Um,
Couldn't agree more.
you
Yeah.
spoke about the alcohol. Did you Was that something that you considered like an addiction for you, or was it just more you just didn't like the kind of person you were? Like, what was your relationship to alcohol?
Yeah, I think it was cultural and and it was like a slippery slope. It just became normalized. I think I had my first drinks in high school, but
Mhm.
college really solidified like, oh, like drinking culture. At night or whatever, we go to a party or have a party or have people over or just sitting around and you have like a few drinks or
Yeah,
whatever. And it's easy for those few drinks to turn into like double that.
yeah,
For me, like if you've noticed, I have my LaCroix and I have a coffee. I don't know what it is, but I'm always thirsty. And so like that's also a dangerous combination. Like when I used to drum, it's like I just always had to have something to drink.
yeah. That
And
makes
if that's alcohol, then that is really easy to just like, oh, I'm like 3 beers in and it's been an hour.
yeah,
Um, but my relationship, I didn't think I was addicted. I probably now would prescribe myself as, or I would label it as probably addicted because it was so normalized, like getting home from work. Okay, I'll have a beer, go out, have a drink. And it was a process to stop. I worked with a therapist who just helped me zoom out and was an objective figure in my life who was professional, who really helped me like get outside of my head. I
yeah.
recommend that to anybody is therapy is and I think it has a bad stigma, but like for me, it was a wonderful tool to just like analyze what's truly going on and why am I doing that? And does it serve me? And does it
Mhm.
serve others? And so at that moment, I realized with the therapist, like, oh, that's not a good thing. And you're playing with fire based on your family history. And
Mhm.
so is that something that you want to continue? And the answer obviously was no. And so the therapist was like, you need to stop everything. You can't be like, okay, I'm gonna have one drink a week or whatever. It's no, you got to go dry just to regain full control. Because like for me, I have a beer. It's not just one beer, it's three or whatever.
Yeah,
And so that's a problem. And and it's easy, like in that time, I was like, no, it's fine because like everybody in the world is doing
yeah,
this. It's so normal.
for sure.
So I don't have a problem, or that means that everybody has a problem. And
Yeah,
maybe that is the case because it is a
it's
problem.
true.
So I just stopped. And it's funny because all last year I didn't drink. And then at the beginning of this year, I tried to like, okay, I haven't drank for a year, completely dry, feel great. So I have control again, right? And so like I tried drinking a little and it was just this slippery slope. It was the same, like you can't just have one. It's not, at least me, like I'm Irish and it's in my blood, I guess. I don't know. I'm thirsty all the time. So, so that couldn't work. So now it was just like, okay, didn't work. I just need to be dry, and that's that. Simplify my life. So, It's a dance, but if you find yourself playing with fire, like just put the flame out. And there is so much other stuff to play with. Great drinks, coffee and LaCroix and you name it.
Yeah, I admire that. I admire your ability to have the awareness to recognize that. And I do see that as I can see how somebody might feel like when it comes to alcohol, not necessarily it not being an addiction, because I know for me, I had to stop drinking alcohol for a little while. I recently have gotten back into having it more socially. So like if I'm at a party, or if I'm at a restaurant, I'll have like a drink, that type of thing. But I at one time I also felt like you did, where it was kind of like, you know, it's not a big deal. Everybody else is doing it, that type of thing. And I felt like my thought process was like, if I'm not, there are other people that are out there that are like, shooting up or snorting coke or doing drugs like that. This compared to that is not as bad. So this can't be that bad. And that was just kind of the way that I rationalized it.
Mhm.
And when I realized that I was rationalizing it, that was when I realized, you know what, I probably need to, because I've always been of the school of, if you have to make an excuse for it, it's probably something you shouldn't be doing.
Yeah.
And so when I realized that's what I was doing, that's how I stepped back. Now I'm more of a social drinker, and I'm very because I'm an introvert, that works in my favor because I'm very rarely social. So
Yet here you are, you have a podcast.
yes,
I think you can give yourself a little more credit. But
fair enough.
that's interesting that if you don't go out as much, well, then you're not drinking as much if you don't drink alone. If you're drinking
Exactly.
alone, that's a different thing that you're doing. I mean, no hate to anybody. You can do whatever you want as long as you don't drive and you bring other people into that.
Right.
But, I mean, if you find yourself drinking alone a lot, there's something up.
Yeah, for
If
sure.
or if you're drinking to get drunk and forget or to lose yourself, it's like, what do you I think you're running away from something that you just probably need to deal with,
Yeah,
and easier said than done, but that can be done. You hear it all the time.
for sure. For sure. Um, so here's a question for you. We all face these make it or break it moments early on in our career. You have, you seem to have had a career for quite some time now. Could you share one that really, really tested your mettle?
Yeah, COVID. Yeah, I feel like because I ask this sometimes on my podcast and gotten that answer because it was like a dark, difficult, weird flux of time for me. So we moved down to Florida. I got a job at an art group, and it was a fantastic job. Great people. I loved the work, and I elevated myself as a designer. I don't even know. And I learned business processes there, but it was a toxic work environment. And I knew that that was not permanent because that was like the catalyst of like, oh, I really need to start my own business because I don't want to be working somewhere like this and
Mm-hmm.
be unhappy. Because it's crazy being at an art group in the creative department, doing design, working with art day in, day out
Mm-hmm.
was not pleasurable because of the environment and the culture that they created that just sucked the life out of you. It was so eye-opening. But anyways, COVID hit a year and a half after I was at that place, and I was, they knew I was against the culture, so I was one of 75 who were like first on the chopping block.
Mm-hmm.
And it was difficult because my in-laws were in the country from Turkey at that exact time. And so then COVID hit. So I got laid off. My family was stuck here in Turkey, and my grandfather was one of them who had medication and their flight was canceled. So we were dealing with flight cancellations, trying to get them back home. They were all living under our roof, and we do not have a big house. And so it was like madness, and we had no idea what was going on. I had lost my job, and so it was like this huge dip that really was tough.
Mm-hmm.
And I just applied everywhere and just was thinking about ideas and things like that, and started to come up, found a job in COVID who needed a digital marketer, and it's just I don't believe it and I believe it at the same time where it's like things are meant to happen, and if you put yourself out there and you just go get it, then you're going to connect with what needs to happen. But I got a job as a digital marketer, and that was like the last piece of the puzzle from all my experience of teaching, working at agencies. I co-founded a software company with a former business partner of mine that I've just like learned a lot of things about running a business, the creative process, marketing. But this last piece was like an actual marketing position, which I hadn't experienced fully. And so I did that for a year and a half, and they were very encouraging of me. They knew I wanted to start my company. So there was a time where they were just like, okay, we're going to become a client. You got to start your company. And so it was like from the darkest time got me to out of where I was, which I knew I needed to get out of anyways, to getting to a position in my life where that I needed to finalize the puzzle of like my knowledge
Mhm.
of the industry and then the encouragement that I needed to start my own business. And so it was the like one of the darkest times, and then um it essentially was a catalyst for Neyman Creative. And now
That's
here we are over 3 years later.
that's amazing, man. Like that's and I know how COVID was such a it was such a dark time for so many people, myself included. I also got laid off as well during that time, and I was also my circumstances were a little bit different in the sense that my wife ended up getting another job. We both worked for the same company prior to COVID, and we were both laid off, and she ended up getting another job like I want to say maybe a week later, and then that job like
Nice.
skyrocketed her finances. She was able to just cover all of our bills and everything. And so she told me to basically take a year to not go back to work and just figure out what I wanted to do. And that's what made me really fall in love with filmmaking again. And I was just so focused on that, and that led me back. It introduced me to so many different people. Eric being one of them, not so much from the filmmaking stuff, but just my pursuit of building a brand, my pursuit of connecting with the world outside of my own little circle. It just sort of that through those dark times created this whole new network that I currently have now. And so I definitely can relate to that. During
Yeah.
COVID, did I know you were going through all that. How would you say your mental health was during that time?
Not great. It was so divided, where I was really encouraged because I'm like, well, here I am. I can like explore ideas on creating a company. I have opportunity ahead of me to try to find a new position. That's a new, step in my career. But at the same time, it's, oh, my family is stuck here. My wife is scared that the unknown of not having money guaranteed,
Yeah.
for me, like juggling these different aspects of what was happening at that moment was very weird. It was unknown. A lot of what COVID I think is like a big thing is that like nobody knew how to deal with what was happening, from masks to like loans and everything, and like how to like deal with things.
Yeah.
But also, like my own personal feelings of like what is happening, what do I do with my career? It's just all of this feels up in the air, and you're waiting for some of the balls to fall, and once a few start to fall, you're like, okay, okay, I can juggle again,
Yeah.
because they're like actually gravity's kicking back in, or whatever metaphor you want to take. But it was just odd. And so I think my mental health was kind of all over the place, and I was, drinking, and um, yeah, it's just still playing with that fire,
Yeah.
and that, complicated things. And so, but I started to exercise more in that moment. Like I found running again, and I really like to run, because it was like, oh, well, like I can't go to the gym. We live near Walsingham Park. And so I just like started to run 4 miles at a time, because also I needed to get out of the house because everybody was stuck under the roof. So that was like my escape. So I just go and run.
I was just gonna ask you that because that was one thing that I struggled with myself. I ended up developing kind of agoraphobia um, during the COVID times, as well as a little bit after that, because with we had the George Floyd situation, we had um, not even like the killer bees. That didn't really bother me as much. But like just all of the crazy political stuff as well as the health stuff where I would like I was a madman. Like I would make it to like I told my wife I was like if you're gonna go see your parents, you have to like wash up before you come in the house. I cannot. They can't come over here. I'm not going anywhere. I literally would not leave the house for anything. I think the first time that I left the house to go to a store was at least I think a year and a half after
Wow.
COVID started. I like I think the farthest I went outside was to our back porch to let the dogs in and out, and other than that, I would not go anywhere. And I'm still
You weren't
working through that.
alone.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I've been asking people that as well. Like, how did you handle that confinement? Where you find ways to get out into the world, and when you did, how did you see yourself? How did you interact with it? Was that
Yeah.
challenging for you?
Well, luckily I'm in Florida, and so I feel like it's probably one of the best places to be for like freedom of people not necessarily being as careful as they might have could be. But like it's nice because like we could go to the beach and it's outdoors and we could keep our distance.
Mm,
But it was still very weird. You go out and like nobody's on the streets, nobody's out. So there's this like apocalyptic kind of like vibe. We definitely like push the envelope of like we're not gonna let this get to us. We'll just mask up,
mm.
and we'll get out and about. And I guess as far as like the germs thing, I thought, hey, this is gonna like really give an emphasis to health and things like that. But like I think we just like popped back into normal because like I go to the bathroom and watch dudes just walk right out the door after
Yeah.
going to the bathroom. I'm like, hey, wash your hands, man. Like, have you not learned anything
Yeah.
from growing up in the world to like COVID hitting and proper hygiene? It's like, come on. I don't know, that's a little thing. But yeah, it was kind of weird, like once the world started to turn back on, because like you were like when we started to like unmask, it felt like you were nude,
Yeah.
little.
Yeah, for
There's like
sure.
a weird thing happening there. But I'm very grateful that we were here in Florida because, we were able to do outdoor activities. So we had that to our advantage for sure.
Nice. So when I talk about obstacles and things like that, one of the things that I'm curious about is when you hit creative walls, what are your secrets for climbing over them and overcoming them?
First off, you have great questions.
Thank you.
Yeah, this is enjoyable. I love this question because when I taught, this was a thing that I always kind of emphasized with my students because creativity, like right now, it's if someone was like, yeah, go like write a song or make a logo, it's like, okay, and I'd have to like step back, understand what I'm doing, go through the process, and you have to whatever it is like creatively, you have to let that process be. Um, Art, it's very rarely great when forced, in my opinion. There's some things that come great when okay, the deadline is next Wednesday, but you have that time until next Wednesday. So maybe, after this call, I work until it's almost 11 a.m. our time. And so, okay, I work till 3 p.m. and then I feel like, okay, I've been looking at this design too long. Like even like as far as film and color grading, when you start to look at the colors, the same colors over and over again, they actually start to change and you need to step away from
Yeah.
that work in order to recalibrate your eyes and come back to it and go, okay, how dark is that? Or is that too saturated?
Mm,
And so going away from the work is just as healthy as like burying yourself in it, in my opinion. I used to tell students like take a shower, go for a walk or a run, go exercise, get away from the screen or the canvas so that you can come back to it refreshed. Or maybe on your run you see like a leaf and you're like, oh, I didn't think about like doing jagged edges on the edge of that logo or that poster or whatever it is. And you just never know where inspiration is. But if you like stay in your cocoon and just like burn out, there's nothing healthy there. I mean, you could get through it, but I'm a big proponent in like get away, step back, do something else, even if it's just like for me, when I feel like, okay, I'm not being creative, I'm wasting time, like just sitting with this canvas or whatever it is, I'll work on another project. So I'll go here from working on a lawyer's website to working on a logo for a construction company. And it's like, okay, now I feel fresh. I'm coming at that fresh, and I can come back to that website and okay, I have an idea for the layout. It's just like giving yourself space to breathe in these moments because you go too hard and I don't know, it can feel very, very forced.
I agree
There's
with
an
that.
instructor I had a long time ago in undergrad. He was like, and it's a mantra of my company. It's in our one-page company manual. It's think 8 hours, work two. I know what to do, but it's the conceptualization of that thing, figuring out what are we making, why are we making it, and then I know where to click. I know how to make a line
Right.
and things like that. It's the process. That's the biggest thing, and you have to just give that process room.
I think I find that fascinating. I find it also sort of counter. It's not so much not counter. I think it's counterintuitive
Yeah,
for for creatives because as creatives, I know that we love that free spirited space and just be free to create. But then we can get very granular and very analytical about what we're doing to the point where it's just like we obsess about stuff. And that it just seems so interesting that like I know for me, like because I get like super obsessed with like whatever I'm working on, and when it's not working, getting frustrated with it and trying to figure out why. And then I forget I'm an artist because I wanted to be an artist because I like the idea of being able to sort of say, I can step back from this and just let whatever happen. And that's okay. You know what I mean? You can't quite do that when you're building rocket ships or doing, being a lawyer or a doctor. You can't just be like, whatever happens, about it. But as a creative, you can definitely do that. And I think we get so locked into that analytical way of thinking from like day jobs or, running a business type of mentality that sometimes when it's time to sit down and be creative, it's hard to switch out of that mode and just sort of say, just let it happen. Creative is that
absolutely.
unbridled, uncontrollable force that you kind of have to just let be. And so
And
I think
that's the
it's interesting.
difficult.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is interesting. And that's also the difficulty of the arts and the creative realm, where like with science and building a rocket ship, like did it leave the ground? Okay, did it make, orbit?
Mm-hmm.
Did it sync up with Mars? And did we land the rover? Like these are all calculations where it's like 4 plus 4 equals 8 every time.
Yeah.
Whereas like in the art world, like 4 plus 4 could be 7 sometimes or 10. And and
Very
and
true.
and that makes it difficult because we're like, should this be a red line? Should it be blue? And it could be either. And it's like
Exactly.
you have to decide on one.
Exactly. I love that. I love the vibe here because I definitely understand that so well. For you, is there a particular project or creative endeavor that felt like therapy when you were doing it during a tough time?
Oh yeah. Music has definitely been that.
Okay.
So that's like the creative outlet that has always been the space for me to really feel free and alive in a different way. Um, there's amazing connection when you're collaborating on playing and writing music or performing music with a group of talented musicians. There's one thing I like about drums is it is so difficult to do and takes so much concentration because it's every extremity happening at the same time in different patterns and different rhythms that you can't not be fully present in the moment. So it's a craft that forces you quite literally to be in the moment. And there's such peace and tranquility in that. Even though, I keep looking over there because my drum set's over there. It's like it's always whispering in my ear.
Play me. Come
Hey.
play me. Yeah.
But it's like it's so difficult to do that you just have to be fully present because like once you start to think about like, oh, I need to get back to that email if I'm drumming, that
Mhm.
doesn't work out because then
Yeah.
I'm behind the beat or in front of the beat. I'm like, not thinking about the next part of the song and how I'm going to get there. And so it's a wonderful, I almost, equate it to meditation. And there's so many aspects to music. Also, like one thing for me is being in the creative realm. There's a couple things that I mean, I get paid to play music. Not currently because I'm working on a new project, but when I was in a band or whatever playing out, we got paid. But really music has been an endeavor of like absolute passion. And same with photography. I did some photography professionally over the years, did like 5 weddings, did headshots, things like that. But now I refer photography out because I want to keep like these couple things untouched by like true business because I want to keep them more pure and like this is my thing where I can just explore and there's no pressure for the pay, and just
For
keeping
sure.
that craft as is and I can do whatever I want with it. Everything else is part of kind of my business
Yeah.
and creating websites or logos or design and things like that. So I try to also keep like some things just like untouched by the capitalistic realm, if you
Yeah.
will.
That makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. And I can get why you would do that. There's some stuff that has to be just for you. And I think so
Yeah.
I get that. I get that totally. Speaking of business then, I want to switch gears from creative to talk a little bit about business stuff. Um you started Neyman Creative. What sparked that decision to not just create but to create for good?
Oh, yeah. Cool question. Well, so number one, we help build businesses that, help them grow and prosper and reach more people. It's like everything we do like comes back to marketing, growth, and building.
Mhm.
And it's, early on, I saw that it's very important for me to use these talents towards good things or things that aren't something that's not in alignment with what I believe. Like like for instance, if it's an evangelist who comes to me and wants us to market their particular religion and they want to evangelize and like convert people and things like that. That's not really for us because I don't believe that thing. And so
Right.
how could I in good spirits for them or us help them market that when I don't believe truly that thing.
Yeah.
And so it's very straightforward on, well, there are certain lines where it's just like, this isn't a good fit. And so the create for good in that regard is good for like for me and the client, good for hopefully humanity's sake. Like we're trying to target education institutions, museums, science-based organizations, and nonprofits. Those are kind of like 4 pillars that I'd love to continue to work with more. And it's awesome that we've been able to align with several entities within those realms. The second aspect to it, it's like a double entendre that create for good is a reminder to our team and to the customers is that we're creating this logo or this website and it's gonna last a long time. It's for good, as far as permanent. Unless you make a big pivot in your business, this logo should last the life of your business, and you're gonna have all the files and everything that you need to just grow from there. Same with the website. We're gonna do it right at the beginning, and we're gonna do it well and good, and then it's for good. You can
Yeah.
now just build on top of that website.
Nice. I like that. I like that. And I definitely like the idea that that you work with clients that you feel align with your own values, your own uh, interest, not so much, I mean, even interest too, it seems like. And so that level of, I think I love that independence that you have because so many people will work with people simply so they can get the business and not
Yep.
so much for the fact that I kind of want to enjoy what I'm doing. I want to enjoy the projects that I'm working on, enjoy the people that I'm working with. And so since your goal from the start is to work with individuals that align with the same core values or views or interests that you have, keeps you on a path that makes it so that you enjoy going to work, every single day, as opposed to it's kind of like, yeah, I got to work with this person and I really can't stand, this was a money grab type of thing. It's you don't put yourself in those types of situations. And I think that's incredible. Is that something that you did
Mm.
from the beginning, or is that something that sort of developed as you started working through things?
That was from day one. Yeah. Because I saw, from my experience and just like seeing how things play out in the world, I saw that like it's a slippery slope if you start to say yes to something and you don't believe in that. And then another project like that comes along and you've set a precedent for saying yes to something that you don't believe in. And now you're doing that. But from the beginning, it was like literally day one. I was like, well, like I need to stay true so that we stay authentic and on track on the right path and in alignment with what we believe is right. Because, like as artists and creatives, there's power to that and how the world perceives whatever they're interacting with that we make, and we have the power to like grow that thing. And again, if I don't believe that that thing should grow, then what am I doing helping you grow it? It's not a good fit for us. It's not fair to that client spending money on it because, it's kind of like I don't know if you're familiar with the term fiduciary in the financial realm,
I've
where
heard of it, but I'm not sure. I'm not like super. I've heard the word. I've just never looked into what it meant or anything.
it was sort of new on me once I got into business because like okay like how it got me to thinking about like how do I like really manage money even though I didn't have much, but I wanted to start to plan for how I was going to do that. But anyways, my financial advisor is a fiduciary, and so he's legally obligated to do what's best for me and the prosperity of the decisions that he makes. He needs to do what's best because he could make decisions if you're not a fiduciary that's better for his business or better for whatever he's supporting with stock investments or whatever. And so that's like a slippery slope in that regard too. And so like I feel like I'm kind of like a fiduciary in the creative realm for
Mm.
our clients because yeah, again, it's a slippery slope. We just need to make sure that we're doing what's best for like both parties. Otherwise, it's like, what are we doing? Also, like I like the work that I do every day. And if I was starting to let that slide, I'd be working throughout the day, which is my finite life, on stuff that I didn't believe in or enjoy. It's likely clients that I probably wouldn't enjoy interfacing with. And so it's like, what are we doing? Why would I use my time? Why would I create a company to just like be miserable in those sections of the
Yeah,
business? Like, so let's just cut that out.
that makes sense. That makes a lot of sense. So then, was that had to be challenging in the early goings? I mean, because I imagine you were saying that you were coming off. I'm assuming this was after the this was you said this was around the COVID time, so this was after you were
Yeah.
laid off and all that. So financially, you probably weren't. I'm assuming you weren't in the greatest of spaces. So learning to be able to say no to people in favor of doing what you working with people you want to work with. That had to be a bit of a challenge. How did you sort of resist the urge to say, you know what, the money's here, so I'm going to go do that for now, and then have my morals and in my ideals later. How did you resist that urge?
Well, just having the tagline "Create for Good" helps to like it. We wrote it. It's there. We need to uphold that. It's in our company manual. So for me, like that one-page manual was very important to create right away because it was just me at the beginning, and I needed to like lay out my goals and my missions and like who we are, so that it helped me keep in alignment. Luckily, I don't have to say no as much as I say yes. It's rare that people come to me that are out of alignment because I've had to turn down like a handful of prospective jobs. It's a very small percentage compared to like, hey, yeah, this works. You're a nice person. There's been jobs where I turned down because the person didn't treat me properly right from the get-go, like in our kickoff meeting or our discovery meeting. And I was like, there's a red flag there. They're already treating me this way. What would that be when they're under contract actually paying me?
Mm.
I'm just going to go ahead and say, I wish you the best, because I always wish people the best, and just wish them well.
Mm.
So it's like it's different things, but overall, we have been able to say yes to a majority of things, because also the referrals and the work that we do in the realms that we're in and the networks that we're in, people know who we are.
Mm.
And so right there, they also now have like a barometer on, oh, this would be a good fit for Neyman Creative, or ooh, this actually wouldn't. I'm just not going to refer them. So I don't even know what probably hasn't been
Mm.
passed to us, because those filters are now kind of in place over
Gotcha.
time because they know who we are.
Gotcha.
So luckily early on, I was able to align with people based on, because you have to start somewhere. So I started, telling everybody that I was connected to about it, and the people that I hang out with and are friends with and family, they're, in alignment with things. So
Lovely.
there's already a good start there.
Okay. So so we're talking about we talk right now we're talking about the beginning stages and where how you got there. Now you said 3 years later, you have a team that you work with and employees. I imagine that leading a team of creatives is not a small feat. How would you describe your approach to leadership and how has it evolved?
It's evolving every day.
Okay.
And I don't want that to stop, because there's so much to it. And I'm not perfect. My big thing is that toxic work environment that at the art group that I had
Yeah.
worked at, that taught me a lot about how I should not treat my team. And I don't. They have flexibility. So unless you like have to be here for a recording, or there's something very specific or a deadline, I don't necessarily care when you do the work or how you go about it, because everybody has their own process, and everybody has a life. Like, I don't want to make someone feel like, man, it is hard to get to my child's appointment, or like my family's important dinner. It's like, no, you can like just do the work up until that point, work around it, knowing that that's in your schedule, and you need to do those things. And like prioritizing that you have the freedom to be happy in life, because otherwise, again, what are we doing?
Mm.
You're just gonna
Yeah.
work to work and like be miserable and be
Sure.
mad that you can't do the things that you want to do. Why are you working hard? And so like that's very big for me, is that you have the flexibility to do what you need to do, just making sure that you get the work done and that it's a high quality. And most of the time, and that it's not just with Neyman Creative, it's with any business. When you allow someone that freedom, it doesn't always work, but I think a majority of the time, people are now appreciative of the business, and they realize like this business cares about me and they care back, and they're more invested in the business and therefore more invested in the work. And so their work is actually better than when if they feel bad during the
Mm.
day and they're like, I don't care, just get the work done. Instead, they're like, I care because I want this business to continue to succeed so that I'm a part of it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's kind of it's like this nice cycle of like fulfilling each other's needs. The business supporting the individual and the individual supporting the business.
That makes sense.
And so there's a lot of other stuff, but that's like definitely a core where I don't want to treat anybody the way that I would want to be treated. So I
I,
kind
I
of take
can
that philosophy.
I can respect that. I think that's a great mentality to have. I know that leadership comes with certain lessons, and I think some of those lessons are probably going to be learned the hard way.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
is there any particular lessons that you would pass on to someone else that you learned the hard way so that they don't have to?
Oh, well, communication, being more straightforward is probably one thing where, like, sometimes, first off, business is so fast and has a momentum of its own, and it's easy to get lost in that momentum and think that you communicated better than you actually did.
Mhm.
And that's with my team or my clients. So now I'm actually this year, I've been in a big habit of picking up my phone, having like a list of 10 people that I want to call that day. And instead of emailing them, I just pick up the phone and say, hey, just wanted to check in, and talk about this one thing and actually talk to them rather than send an email. Number one, I found that that's faster. Number two, it's more effective, because they're like, oh, cool. Like I'm getting a call. I'm talking to Josh, and we're just like hashing it out. We can also talk about other things and be way more efficient than like back and forth emails. And so I've really like taken that to heart. But one thing is just like trying to be more transparent. I think it's always been easier where there's honesty, there's transparency, and I know that, okay, like because I've said it, I've communicated it properly. But when, I get caught up and I'm not sure if I've communicated it properly, I probably haven't treated my team or clients as best as I could have by telling them what's going on, or how I feel or what's ahead. And I've likely dropped the ball on certain things. Also, in that regard, like communication's great for ongoing work. Like I pick up the phone now and I just check up on people, even if we're not actively working on a project. Just like, hey, how are things going? How's like that website working? Do you need anything from us? How are you doing? Like we've developed a relationship. I care. So just like checking in, and usually that's like, oh yeah, I've been meaning to call you. We want to make a couple new pages or this section on the site, or we
Mm.
need business cards made. And I know you do that, and so it's like win-win.
Yeah, I love that, and I like that you pointed out communication, because that's a lesson that I recently learned in directing. Because um, directing my first one of my first shorts at the end of last year, um, that level of communication where you think you've communicated something a certain way to someone, and so you've said this and this, and they've heard that and that, and for some reason you seem to believe that it's the same thing, and sometimes it's not, and learning to sort of get a better understanding of how you're communicating with people, and making sure that you're being clear, and having that clarity with people, as well as that transparency. I think that's also really, really, really important. I Transparency is important to me with everything. I try to be as radically honest as I can be with everybody about everything, even to my own detriment sometimes. I try to make sure that I do that. So I definitely respect that for you. What's one piece of advice that you would give to someone stepping into a creative leadership role for the first time?
Creative leadership. That's a really loaded question. I almost like go back to teaching more than even like the position I'm in now. One thing I would emphasize is letting people enjoy their life and don't put them in a box and
Mm-hmm.
and drill them down, nail them to their desk. You're good, and don't squeeze the life out of them. One thing from that art group that they had always told us is stay in the orange. And it was like in a metaphor for cars and
Mm.
RPMs, and like
Yeah.
redlining it. So they wanted us to almost be redlining it at all times in the
Yeah.
orange. And it's just like, what are you doing? So you're just actively burning people out, because if you're in the orange, that's still, you don't drive a car right near redlining
Right.
ever. Unless, like you hit the orange and you switch the gear.
Mm.
And so, like, especially in the creative realm, letting people be free and like have time to go for a walk, and setting reasonable deadlines as a leader, that would be the thing. Instead of going, all right, it's due tomorrow and you got to work until 8, 9 o'clock tonight. I don't care about your family's dinner, kind of thing. Obviously, like that's over the top, but you could not say those things and be saying those things
Yeah.
by saying, look, I don't care what you have to do. You've
Yeah.
got to get this done by noon tomorrow. And that person's like, well, I want to keep my job. I guess I can't go home until it's done. Rather than like, okay, as a leader, I'm going to look at this workload and this is going to take 3 weeks. I'm not getting, there's no need to pack it into a week. We're going to get better work, and our team is going to be happier, and they're probably going to have a much better product because there's more time to also hash through those concepts rather than be forced to like, well, I have an hour left. this is the character, this is the design, whatever it is. So giving them space and time, I think is enormous in the creative realm. That's probably like one of the biggest things, because the worst thing to feel as a creative individual is like they pressure is good. Unreasonable pressure or unreasonable deadlines and that force is not great. Pixar, I have a ton of Pixar posters. Pixar's been like a pillar for me. They work their employees hard, but they also spend the time that they need to developing a film. It takes 4 or 5 years from start to
Yeah,
finish to make a film there. And they have thousands of people working there.
for sure.
Obviously, they're great
Yeah,
masterpieces, but they give it the time that it needs to develop the story properly and then everything that supports that.
that makes sense. That makes sense. Okay. So I want to dive into some more deep personal introspective questions here. So here's a thought provoker for you. I've always wished I had someone to share blank with. What fills that blank for you and why?
For me, it's my belief systems or lack of belief, I suppose. Sometimes I feel like an outsider because I don't believe things that are normalized in society, like in the spiritual realm or whatever. And and it's hard to navigate. It kind of feels like someone who would be gay 75, 100 years ago, whereas like you gotta kind of like feel people out before you start to talk about it.
Yeah,
And so I wish I could be more open. I'm getting better about it. But that's certainly one thing where it's like I always have to like dance because it's such a sensitive topic. Same
for
with like
sure.
politics.
Yeah.
It's like people don't like to talk about the difficult things. But for me, it's like we likely agree on 95% of the things.
Yeah.
But let's just talk and have a reasonable conversation, because that's what's most important. That's why like I'm on this podcast. I have my own podcast, produce several others. Like conversation is so important to just the public discourse, and talking through things is the most healthy thing and important thing
Of
for
course.
society. Otherwise, you're fighting with each other or you're not communicating, which leads to fighting or animosity without verbal communication. And
Mhm.
and people are upset over something that they probably don't need to be upset about.
For sure.
And so it's like it's the things that are hard for people to talk about that I wish were easier to talk about more openly without people flipping out and feeling personally attacked when, you're just talking about general thing. It's not
Yeah,
about them.
of course.
It's like it's like when I taught or every day in the creative realm, when I present a logo to a client, they're like, I don't like that one, but I like that one. I don't get upset because they didn't like a logo. Like, oh my gosh, you have hurt my feelings because you didn't like this rose design and you liked this other. It's like, no, just like, okay, you didn't like it, or oh, that's why it's not good. But you like this one, cool. And we can talk about that one then.
I get that. I get that a lot, and I think I agree with you on the conversation aspect of things, and because I grew up Jehovah's Witness,
Okay.
and then as I got older, I moved away from that. My mom is still a Jehovah's Witness. I moved away from it, and a big part of my life growing up was shutting people out whose opinions and beliefs were different than mine, and I think that psychologically, I'm sure my therapist would probably say this, that my response was to go as radically opposite of that as an adult. So now I'm so open to everybody else's thoughts and beliefs. And I'm a firm believer that people always, one of my best friends always gets mad at me because I say that I think everybody deserves a platform, and I think that everybody should be allowed to say whatever they feel that they have the right to say, as long as you are not actively doing harm to other people. I firmly believe that you have the right to be able to say what you feel and express that. If that's how you feel, that's how you feel. I don't have to agree with it. I don't have to think that it's, the most brilliant thing in the world, but I do think you have the right to express it. I also am a firm believer that in a world where you shut people down, um for trying to state their opinion, you create radicalists and you create people who do more harm than good because they feel they have no voice when you strip it away from them. Most of the people I find that do really terrible things would generally be harmless if they were given a space to speak. And the reason why they do these drastic things are because they feel they weren't heard. And so I believe in having a conversation with someone. And from, I was telling my best friend this. I said I would have no problem having a member of, just for sake of example, a member who was of a rock band who was in the KKK. I would have no problem with them being on my show, because I would want to have that conversation. I want to know why you think things that you think and why you feel the way that you feel. I don't agree with them. I don't. It's not something that I would endorse and say, hey, we should get out there and be just like you, but I want to know why. So I think I agree with you completely that conversation is so important. It allows for inroads to be made amongst individuals who otherwise would never connect in any way, shape, or form. And I think it's also the key to change in anything, whether it be society issues, political things, whatever. I think the only way that things are ever going to change is if people actually communicate with one another. So I really, really admire that perspective of you. And I also admire the answer to that question, because I think being able to share your thoughts, your beliefs, your feelings with other people, I think is so important. And I think that, on my show specifically, and glad for your show as well, I'm always going to have a space for you here to be able to say whatever you feel you want to say.
Right on.
Yeah. So
it's a lot.
No problem. So here's a question that somebody asked me recently. It was a couple months ago, but now I'm asking everybody that ever comes on my show. If tonight, God forbid, was your last night on earth, what's the one thing you'd regret not saying, and why haven't you said it yet?
Well, it's like saying it to the world or saying it to the ones I love. Holy moly.
I had the same.
I told you I intentionally didn't look at your questions ahead of time, but maybe this is one that I should have.
I had the exact same response when somebody asked me this, so don't worry.
Yeah, it's really, really great question. I might steal some of your questions.
Sure, go ahead.
Oh man, probably just connecting with the people that maybe I've lost as close touch with as I wouldn't have liked to, like friends of mine that because I moved or because we've grown older, I really would just like to call them and catch up. And I need to, it's so weird. You get caught up in the momentum of the day, and then you're at the end of the day and you got to sleep. And you can't call everybody that you want or talk to everybody, or you're worried like, oh, they're busy, and I see their posts, so they're okay. But really, like, it's not about what I'd say. It's about just like reaching out and saying, hey, like, just wanted to talk and catch up. Because I got a lot of friends all over the world, and, some people I just would love to talk to more. But there's only 24 hours in the day, and few of those I got to sleep, and the others I've just been constantly bombarded with things in the business. Now I have a daughter, which is just the absolute priority. And now those people have daughters and sons, and I know that those are their priorities. But really, it's not about what I'd say. It's about like who I'd reach out to and just like make sure to catch up and just say, hey, thinking about you. You mean a lot to me, and I just want you to not forget that. And I know that I could pick up the phone right now and we'd be right back to where we left off, because they're such good people. But, making that effort, and maybe this was a good reminder to do that, once a week or once a day, where just pick up the phone, call somebody that is like, it's been too long. I'm going to call them. That was something that was beautiful about COVID in a way. Moving down to Florida, I had such a solid friend group, still do, in Indiana. And one thing is they were all kind of experiencing what I felt moving to Florida, which is that we're all confined to the houses. Even though they're all up in Indiana, they couldn't really get together. So instead, we scheduled evenings that we would all get on here and video chat and just talk about whatever and just shoot the stuff. I don't know if we can curse on here. So
Yeah, you can. Sure.
shoot the shit. But catch up, and that was really like a special thing. COVID had its moments. I think for everybody in those dark times, there's lightness if you don't let it overcome you. And like that was one thing where, weekly we had a call and we just all like talked. And it was so pleasurable because like, why haven't we been doing this? And I've actually been wanting to do that again. But now that COVID's not back, they're all hanging out and I'm down here in my silo.
Mhm.
So, it's just taking the initiative to communicate. Hopefully that answered your
For
question. I
sure.
know I cheated a little.
No, but that's your answer. That's your truth. I'm here for it.
Right.
Okay, so I'm gonna ask you as we wrap things up. I'm gonna ask you the ones that I ask everybody. The usuals is what I call them. The
Cool.
first one being, to be a storyteller, one must explore different worldviews other than their own. How do you expand upon yours?
Travel. 100%. My life has been absolutely transformed through my traveling. I spent the money that I didn't have and all the money that I earned from 2008 until recently on just traveling, exploring the world, learning about other cultures, meeting other people through that conference and elsewhere, where I was just exploring the world. Getting out of your bubble, out of your own head, experiencing other cultures is eye-opening because you realize, man, people are beautiful everywhere. There's beauty all over the world. It's what makes the news and headlines and things like that, or preconceived notions and stereotypes that rise to the surface but are not necessarily the rule. They're more like the exception because most people are good. Most people want the same things: happiness. They want to eat well, sleep well, enjoy family and friends in the day. Most people want that. It's like what you were talking about is people become radicalized when something happens and they have nowhere to go or no platform to talk about it or nothing to do about it. And so they have to lash out, or no resources, so they have to steal. And then that gives that whoever is that person, whatever it be, skin color or religion, now that you're giving that name, that people are is tarnished because, oh, that person like had to do something to feed their family or felt this way. It's getting out of your bubble. Like traveling has been absolutely transformative. I'd prescribe it to anybody who needs to, a perspective check or something like that, because that has been the number one pivotal thing in my life for growth, for enjoyment, for pleasure, for learning about the world, for enjoying experiences. I met my wife traveling, so it changed my entire life. Now I have a daughter with her, so it's literally been everything in my
Nice,
life.
very nice. What's one thing you're super into right now that you can't stop talking about?
Oh, in general, probably just business. It's hard to like turn that off. I'm in networking groups. I started a leadership organization. Eric, the business coach that we share,
Mhm.
who we got in touch with, I feel like do him justice of shouting him
For
out.
sure, for sure.
Like him and I can't turn it off, and it's distracting having an office next to him in a great way. But it's like I'm obsessed with the that there is no ceiling to business and that there's always so much to do, whether it be the work or processes or establishing something new in my business or doing something better or networking with more people and discovering more things. It's like it's never ending, and so it's addicting in like the best of ways. So
Okay,
that probably, and then there's always drums,
of course.
because there's no ceiling on drums. I will always feel like I'm not good enough with drums. There's no way, because there's unbelievable talent out there. I know what can be done. It's like I'd have to live on the drums to even get like 10% of the way to some of these people out there. So, yeah, that's a neat thing too.
Awesome. Okay. The last question that I ask is, I want you to think back to a time in your life where you were at your absolute lowest. You were really going through it, and you thought you weren't going to make it. What's the one thing you would say to yourself today that what's the one thing you today would say to yourself then?
That whatever is happening in that moment, that dust will settle. That it's really hard to like see through that cloud, and it's very dark at that time, but it's not, the sun is going to rise again, and to give it time to step away from that, to disconnect from that in any way that you can, to give yourself room to breathe and think about it properly. Like I lost a friend to suicide in high school, and like this, he had many bad days over several months. But that's, we have a full life, and you made a permanent decision
Mm.
based on your feelings. And I'm not undermining anybody's feelings, but that's like a permanent decision of something that's not permanent as
Sure.
far as like what you acted on. Like you don't have a girlfriend now, but man, you're gonna have a babe. Who knows? Tomorrow you might have
Yeah,
met her.
for sure.
And it's like, just give yourself some time. Go watch a movie, read a book, play guitar, go for a run. There's a lot. Go talk to somebody. Go get help. If
Mhm.
you really need out of it, lean on other people. Like I said, the world is good overall, in
Yeah,
my opinion. There's a lot of stuff going on, but at the end of the day, people do want to help each other,
for
and
sure.
I want to see that and believe that. And I know that there are resources out there for people. If you can't get out of that mindset yourself, you
Mhm.
can go lean on somebody. Somebody's out there. When I was like in Turkey the first time, I just sat on a bench, and some guy who could not speak to me just continued to try to speak to me and wanted to know about me. And we could not talk. But I never will forget the moment, because we were just enjoying that moment and laughing and
Mhm.
giggling that we can't understand each other, but like we're interested in each other and we care about each other. And I'm clearly not Turkish, although some people think I'm Turkish because I have Lebanese in me. But it's like there are people everywhere who will care if you just ask for some help. And just knowing that time will heal or get you out of that mindset, and that there's something better on the other side of things if you just keep at it and stay true.
For sure. For sure. I agree with that. Okay. Well, thanks, Josh. Thanks for sitting with me, having this conversation with me. It was a wonderful conversation. I had a great time talking to you.
Me
Before we get
too.
out of here, let my audience know where they can find you if they want to, if they want to work with you or just want to see what else you're up to. Let them know where they can find you.
Sure. Well, you can go to our website. It's naaman.creative.com, Naaman creative.com. You can hit me up directly at josh@neymancreative.com. Email me. I'm happy to talk to like anybody, talent, or if you're needing stuff. You can listen to our podcast. It's everywhere. And it's just called the Neyman Creative Show. And so any of those things, you'll find me, and, happy to talk and just have a conversation, whether you're in business or you're a creative, see where you're headed and where we could fit in.
All right. Sounds good. Well, again, thanks, Josh, for joining us. And ladies and gentlemen, this has been the Mentally Ill Creative Podcast. And we'll see you next week.